Hello and welcome to Decorate It. My name is Mary and this is Wes, and tonight is episode 45, and we have a special guest on tonight. I'm very, very excited about it, but we wanted to discuss a little bit about custom colored guides and how you can use those to make your rods cooler, honestly.
Better
Better
looking,
create a theme.
more custom.
Yeah. And a lot of people would probably go, okay, well, are you painting the guides? And no, we're not painting the guides because painting is definitely going to chip off and it's not going to last. You could paint them, but it's definitely not going to hold up over time. But Michael Ward is the owner of Back Creek Custom Rods, and he started his colored guide series. And we have bought numerous sets from him. I actually have the Phoenix guides that are unfortunately still not wrapped on the rod, but he went out of his way to do a ombre effect for a fire for me. And I'm so mad I haven't got those finished yet because it's been over a year. But stuff's happened.
A little bit behind.
Just a wee bit. That's personal bill that gets put to the side. We already know that we can do custom grips. We can paint our blanks because we had Don Schaefer on talking about painting your blanks and getting that done. And now let's talk about what we could do with reel seats and guides, because you can also do reel seats as well. So without any further ado and keeping him waiting, let's welcome Michael to the show. Woo! Hey, Mike, what's going on?
Hey, thanks for having me on. Good to talk with you guys.
It's great to have you. And you get to talk about your favorite thing tonight. You get to talk about guides. So, before we get into all of the awesomeness that you do on your rods, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I live down in North Carolina, so just up the road from you guys, a couple hours, I guess. And we've been here in North Carolina since, I guess I've been here since junior high time frame in one part or the other. And about 15 years ago at this point, I guess, made a trip up to Smith Mountain Lake in Virginia for a vacation, and that sort of reinvigorated some of the fishing passion that I had over the years. It had kind of faded away with a lot of other things going on with work and school and family and things of that nature. And but got back involved heavily in inland striped bass fishing. Got really involved in the fishery up there, and that's led to participating in the Striped Bass Club at Smith Mountain Lake, and being kind of leading that for a number of years in different capacities, and also I guess 10 years ago started a striped bass tournament series on Smith Mountain Lake, where we do a catch photo release type series, and we're in our 10th anniversary season of that tournament this year. So, but somewhere along the way there, I guess probably about 10 years ago, I remember while I was in the fishing, there was a couple of guys that were involved in that community that built rods, and I kind of was interested in it and said, well, maybe I should check that out. And I remember seeing some of Mudhole's courses, and that they were going to have one in the Winston-Salem area, but things didn't work out to go take advantage of that class at the time, and it kind of faded away. But then I guess it's been about 5 years ago now, late 99, a little bit before the pandemic, unrelated to the pandemic, but decided I wanted to build my own rods. With striped bass fishing, with freshwater striped bass fishing, we fish with sometimes 10 and 12 rods at a time, live bait fishing, and you kind of wanted to have something that would be a little bit nicer quality and a little more personalized to me than the ugly stick striper rods that we would use, that most folks use there, and that's kind of what got me into it. I spent a lot of time on YouTube and forums and things, kind of reading, and the goal was to go to the ICRBE and learn a whole bunch of stuff and figure out what all I needed to jump into it head first, and I did that. And I think that was the February 2000 ICRBE. It kind of blurred apart. It was certainly pre-pandemic. I think it was the one before the pandemic canceled, which, if I remember right, was 2001 that they didn't have. So went to that and got a chance to meet a lot of different folks and learn a lot of things, take advantage of the seminars at ICRBE, and talk to a lot of the vendors, and and kind of went from there and decided that, well, if I was gonna do it, t- a lot of times I have the tendency, if I'm going to do something, is to go big or go home kind of approach. So I wanted to get everything, everything right, get the right equipment up at the door. Got my Alps wrapper to start with, and wanted to build a rod dryer. Work in the kind of my finished basement, which sometimes has spiders and other bugs crawling around. So I wanted to build a drying cabinet to keep things nice and clean. So that took a little bit of time to do. Kind of got sidetracked with a rotator cuff surgery that had me out of it for a few months along the way there. So it was probably September of that year before I really got around to finally wrapping some of the first guide wraps. But then it's kind of been wide open since then, with doing rods and building rods and taking advantage of a number of the video courses that the Decker Studios put out to learn how to do different types of guide wraps, and a lot of the other resources from Bill Falconer, and some of the material from on grips and Decker wraps from Billy Vavone and others. Just a lot of the great resources that exist out in the community to help learn and accelerate accelerate our collective learning. So kind of proof point of the value of sharing that information across to everyone and what we can do with that. So, but so a few years into that wrapping, I decided I wanted to have the opportunity. I wanted to find another way to bring some personality into the build, and one way that would be, how do we have some color on the guides themselves, right? I mean, you had your silver and your black, and occasionally a few other combinations that titanium, chrome, or whatever you might have. There were a couple of lower quality, unfortunately, painted guide sets that were available, but just didn't hold up well from all the experience I had seen from some of the that were available in the mass market. So that kind of got me looking at options, and I had seen the titanium anodization. I'd seen Billy do it. I'd seen Lori Baird doing anodizing titanium guides, and some others as well. And decided I'd give it a try and figure out what I need to learn about it, and kind of started doing that, and that led into some of what we see in the little bit of the screen there now, just the ability to bring a breadth of color together with a very high quality, of course, titanium, the best material you can have on a guide. Bring that forward into the rod, and another way to bring that personality into the rod. And I was doing that for about a year, I guess, and decided to sort of bring that to the market and to the rod building community, and actually start offering that. I figured if I was interested in doing that, and having those available for rods, other builders were as well, and maybe either didn't know how to do it, weren't interested in investing in the equipment and the process, or burning through the bone pile, as I call it, that builds up over time, particularly with the titanium. Sometimes there can be some challenges, and again, it's not cheap material. So, so if there's people that are interested in there, let me make that available and bring it to market. Brought that to market at ICRBE. I guess it was the first show after the pandemic when they opened back up. Got a booth there and sort of introduced that to the community there, and began to sell those to the rod building community. But then from there, it was like, okay, well, this is great. Have this set of color options, but there were two main drawbacks. One, titanium is expensive. It's certainly a premium material, and it carries a high price tag. Oftentimes, the titanium guide train itself is going to cost, in some cases, as much as the blanket and every other part you're putting on the rod, right? Your reel seat and other things combined.
Yeah,
And
for
the other
real.
downside, you can't get red
Yep.
and certain colors that you can't get out of the titanium spectrum. So that led me to explore powder coating. I know there were some folks that had done that in different capacities, and I know there was I think Adam that used to do it commercially some years ago before he sort of stepped away from it, and other guys like Bill Manziel down in Texas that have does it on occasion, and other things. So I said, well, let me give that a try. It sort of found a way to make it viable from a moderate scale perspective that's needed to bring that to market, and really that opened it up, both the ability to do colors that we couldn't do with titanium anodization, but more importantly, I think opening it up to a lower, more attractive cost point. And sort of with that, I think this is year 3 going on 4, I think, that we've been bringing the powder coat guides as well to market. Had the benefit of hundreds of guides, and with probably 100 customers or more worldwide, that have taken advantage of it, and appreciate all their support with it, and the ability to really express and personalize their rods in ways that weren't able to do before.
That's awesome. Like for me, like just for shits and giggles, because I really don't know. I mean, I know the difference between anodization and powder coating, But as far as like the longevity between the two, which one is going to be your stronger bond? I'm guessing the anodization,
Yes.
but
Yeah, and they're sort of they're different processes. Titanium
yeah.
anodization is a electrochemical process where we actually clean and then treat the part with sort of an acid-based solution to help it accept the anodization. But then it goes into basically goes into a dielectric solution where we pass DC current through the part. And what that does, and I'm not going to claim to fully understand all the physics and the chemistry, but it causes
I
a
wouldn't understand it
oxidation
regardless.
layer to
So
grow on the it causes an oxidation layer to grow on the surface of the metal, and depending on the voltage you apply, that oxidation layer grows thinner or thicker, and then as light bounces through that layer, that creates the color that we see. So, as an example, the
okay,
bronzes are down around the 10, 15 volt range, and the greens are like around 100 volt DC range. So, you kind of have to play with the voltage to get the color you're looking for. In the case of anodization, there's nothing to chip or peel. It's not a paint, not a coating that's being applied. It's literally a surface level oxidation. Rust is an oxidation in some respects, but it's not obviously not rust. A little more attractive than rust. The titanium anodization, the anodization can be abraded from the part. You can sand it or effectively sand it or braid it away, but in general use from a rod building perspective or fishing perspective, it's if you bang the guide up against a railing or it's bouncing against the side of the boat as riding out to the fishing grounds, nothing's going to chip or peel or anything at that point. The only thing you might have to worry about is if you're throwing it in the back of the truck and it's just vibrating and rubbing against, a portion of it rubbing against the truck bed or something on the way there. We can contrast that with powder coating. It is a colored coating that's going onto the part, and it has to bond to the surface of the part to get a good mechanical and sort of a bit of a chemical bond there. So in those cases, it is possible for the powder coat to chip if treated poorly. That said, when done properly, it is a very robust process. I've got a video on the website and on my Facebook page where I take one of the guides that powder coated red and then just take a hammer and smash it 4, 5, 6 times to where the guide's flattened out and the ceramic ring is broken, I think. And the powder coat's just happy as can be, and no signs of wear or damage to the coat itself. So, it is a robust process, but I won't guarantee you that it never ever will. It just kind of depends how you treat your equipment. Like everything, if you take care of your stuff and you treat it reasonably well, it's going to give you good service. But so that's sort of the difference. The the other pro and con is with anodization, we are bounded by a certain color spectrum. Basically, the spectrum that you see in the picture on the screen now. You can't get red, you can't get oranges, and you certainly can't get crazy, some neons and whites and blacks and things of that nature. Whereas
Right.
with powder coating, it's kind of an unlimited rainbow of colors that we can get, including getting things like color shifts or pearls or other more exotic type colors as well. So really opens up the universe, I guess for good or bad when it comes to providing those to market. But there's just tons of options and choices that are available on the powder coat side.
good info. That makes it a little bit easier to understand for sure. I like
Yeah,
I like
the
I like the attractive rust. That's my favorite. As far as your own personal builds, what has been your favorite build that you've built since you started?
I'd say it probably was one of two. One was a build that I did for the ICRB or the International Rod Building Competition a couple of years ago, and that one I integrated a number of things. I did a very, for at least for me, pretty complex decorative closed wrap, sort of a sunburst type pattern on it. And then on the guide wraps, there was a lot of kind of not a fade, but each of the main colors in the build, there was sort of trim band, like 5 or 6 colors of trim bands up all those guides. But then on the grips, I used a technique that I haven't really seen done elsewhere, but basically where it was using much like an EVA overlay wrap, where you're doing the the foam inlay, foam overlays over a EVA core, but instead of using the EVA for the color field, I actually used colored epoxy, colored with
Mhm.
mica powders, and so it had a rod that was themed of a yeah a young boy fishing, and on the thing. So that was a lot of fun when it's kind of tried some new techniques with the grips and some things there, and then it just was a good challenging kind of rod to build and came out really nice. The other one that I think was probably one of my favorite from a just from a fun something crazy and new, and I think the guides are shown later on in the session here, but it was a uh, Goliath grouper rod for a customer down in Florida who was building sort of a memorial or wanted a memorial rod for his dad that whose name was his nickname was Jelly Belly. And I remember Mary, you and I were talking a little bit about that at one of the shows about how I got this coming up, and you're like, it'd be really cool if you integrate jelly beans in that rod. And I was like, well, okay. So now Alice has transferred over to me on trying to figure out how I'm going to how to do that, and ended up casting in acrylic, clear acrylic, casting some faux jelly beans. I guess they're epoxy kind of jelly beans into a cylinder that then basically was part of the foregrip of the rod, and then it had a kind of just a really bright multicolor chevron wrap, and then it was roller guides out. Well, it was a combination of ring guides and roller guides, and they were each a different one of the main primary colors that were integrated, and then the foregrip, actually the foregrip and the lower grip, um, took advantage of the kind of the epoxy inlay technique that I talked about a moment ago, to bring in the name Jelly Belly into the grip itself. So that one was just, it was just like crazy off the wall kind of rod that was totally fun to, you know, really just try a lot of different new things and figure out how to make it happen. So
Those were probably two of my favorite ones that I've seen you build. And obviously, the Jelly Belly one I always get a kick out of because you were like, damn it, Alice. But I was like, it'd be so cool if you would do it. And you pulled it off. And I love that. And it ended up being in one of our intro because it was such a cool looking little piece that you did for that rod. So those were actually two of my favorites that I've seen you do. And you've built a lot of really nice looking rods, but those were my two favorites, probably because they were so outside the box. But you know me, I like the wild things, if you will.
Just a little
right,
bit.
yep.
As far as rod building, like what is your absolute favorite thing to do?
Finish up a rod and deliver it to a customer, and then go fish with one. Um, I don't know if there's one particular part. I think a lot of times when I'm building it, particularly if it's a customer rod, they've got some ideas and some directions to provide. The best ones I think are the ones where they don't, they have an idea of what they have a reasonable idea of what it's just not a total open end for, but they're also not saying this is exactly how I want you to build it, and it's got to look like this, and the wrap's supposed to be this way, and they leave the creative latitude, and also in a lot of cases, like with the wraps, I will do particularly on customer rides because of the time and cost points. I don't do a ton of complex closed wraps just because of the budget. So a lot of the customers that I work with have. So, but a lot of times, really, I know the color scheme I want to go with, and also I don't know exactly what I'm going to wrap till I sit down and start laying thread. And so, to me, I think that's sort of the fun part is like just see what comes out and what what wraps and how it takes shape as it through the process. So I think that's sort of that's probably the funnest part for me. If there's a one particular area is just the um, sort of seeing what materializes as you go through the process.
You're very much different than I. I like to plan my stuff, but then again, I kind of let the rod kind of speak to me too. I kind of go from, all right, this is what the grips are going to do, and then I kind of let everything kind of mold itself. But I kind of have to have a little bit of a plan going into it. I can't just sit down and be like, all right, let's do some magic. Poof, like that's just, I don't know. It's just not how I kind of function.
No, that's same there. I think it's like I think the same from the broader concept of the rod and grips and that part of it, but more on the wrap side, I think is where it just sort of let the thread, like you said, let the thread speak to you and see what comes forward. So,
All right, so what's your least favorite thing?
least favorite thing. I would say is
Wrapping guides.
when have to do.
I bet he likes to
On
wrap
one
his
hand,
though because they're
I
pretty.
appreciate them, but I'd say that they can get. Well, so the thing that could get monotonous is when doing a somewhat complicated set of guide wraps on a set of rods,
Yeah.
4 or 6, where they all need to match and all look the same. And I said on one hand, you appreciate those customers with those sets of rods, but the other hand, they can get. You're glad to get those done by the time you're done. Wrapping 40 of the same complex guide wraps or whatever across 40 or 60 or whatever it might be across all of them. So.
Yeah. I love that he makes custom color guides, but he doesn't like to wrap guides too. It's such a hated thing across the community. I agree though. Wrapping sets of guides is awful. Like doing one offs and stuff is okay, but when you got to match everything across the board, so when they stand up right beside each other, it looks identical. Like that gets. I don't know what it is. Like you know how to wrap the
Right.
guide, but it gets like you forget when you get to the second one. You're like, wait a minute, wait, was it that long? And then you have to like measure 14 times to make sure everything matches up. I got a set of 4 I've got to do, and I'm not looking forward to it.
Luckily, that set is just black and silver.
Yeah,
so-
but it's the silver because it's got to be identical, and I don't have the other 6 to match it to.
You've just got pictures.
I've just got pictures. I've got to figure out what the links were, so that's going to be fun.
But these are also shorter blanks and not the same style. Just the same guides, same wraps,
Right.
same butts,
Yeah.
same grips.
As far as when you start doing like innovation, like with the Jelly Belly and figuring all that stuff out, do you think it's a better idea to test yourself or to listen to what social media is telling you?
So I think it's always good to sort of learn from others and take advantage, understand sort of what others have tried. But that said, you need to go outside the box and do your own thing too. And don't just because it hasn't been done or so when it's always been done this way, that doesn't mean there's not a different way to try something, right? And do something different. Or people say, oh, you can't do that. Well, maybe you can't do it that way, but maybe there's another way to go about it. So yeah, I believe you should, push yourself and try something new, and don't listen to those that say it can't be done. But and then synthesize, what multiple people have done together, or what others have done. Take bits from different pieces, right? Sort of the grips we're talking about a moment ago. I mean, you know, there are those that had done Billy and others had done sort of inlay or those inlay type or overlay type wraps with the EVA foam, and I for a variety of reasons I wanted to have more color selection than was available in the thin sheets of foam at the time to do some of the things I want to do, and that's where it sort of say, well, wonder if I could just pour EVA in and then, or sorry, pour colored epoxy in and use that, and then so I had to try and find some different techniques and different ways to accomplish that, to create those sort of in those sheets or that a form that would work in that method, and had a few failures in the process and things that didn't come out, went straight to the bin. But I think it's you know it, you see something that gives you an idea, and then if you build upon that idea, that's when you come up with something new and new and interesting, and hopefully someone can build upon that as well and do something else with it, with that combined idea, do something even cooler too. So.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's definitely a good idea to listen to, some advice and just general information about different subjects. But I am definitely not one of those people that is going to die hard just, okay, well, they said can't do it. And then I'm going to be like, okay, well, why can't you? Because I don't like to hear can't, never could, you know?
Well, since both of you agree that you shouldn't listen to You Can't Do That, I need some red anodized titanium guides.
He just said he can't get
Well,
that
we
color.
do work in the world of natural law. It's going to require a higher power than myself to achieve that, I think. So.
Oh, man, that's funny. He's just like, well, you said you couldn't do it. Let's do it. Oh, man. Do you think that there's anything that is circulating around in the rod building community that you would consider a myth? I like to ask these questions for our guests. A myth.
A myth? A myth. The spine or no spine? Maybe That might be the biggest one, I
You
guess,
think it's a myth that they have a spine, or
that
you
would
think
latch
it's a
on
myth
to.
that they don't have a spine?
The rods clearly have a spine. Does it matter, or whether you should wrap it on the spine or wrap it on the straightest axis? I don't know. I've fallen. I don't know. I guess I stand on both sides of the line because while I believe you should wrap on the straightest axis, I will say I tend to always spine the rods too, just to see and compare. But if it's kind of if it's a good great straight rod, I'll wrap it on the spine. But if it's one that has a bit of a curve, I'll wrap it on the straightest axis with the tip up. So but I'll still spine it just to see and compare. Um, I don't know. That's probably one of the biggest. Um, I guess the other one will be for me, and it's partly because maybe I covered this at ICRB and it's similar there, but is with epoxy, and the just the amount of overthinking that so many builders, well, maybe put in everything about rod building, but certainly in epoxy, there's just too much overthinking about how to mix my epoxy and bubbles and this, that, and the other. I think if you use a good quality modern epoxy and you mix it and then you use good application techniques and pay attention to how you're mixing it, making sure you have equal parts and don't try, maybe this is the exception to the rule I just said, but there's no need to go and reinvent how to measure epoxy when they tell you to measure it by volume, and then people want to go create weight-based charts and measure it by grams and all that. Just use your syringes, mix it part 1 to 1 and move on. And eh, if you want to froth it up or if you want to mix it with no bubbles, do the right job to apply it, and you're not going to have any issues if you're using a good quality epoxy and applying it in good environment. So maybe that's the other one.
I agree with the spining. Like, we always spine our blanks, but it is very often that you'll come across blanks that have two spines. They got a softer one and a harder one that it snaps into. And unfortunately, a lot of the blanks nowadays have a little bit of a curve towards the tip, or they might have, a section that looks a little funky. And, as long as the blank itself is perfectly fine and there's no, damage to the integrity of it or anything of that nature, then, there's no reason not to build on the straightest axis unless it's going to hinder the performance of it. And then that's one of those ones where it's like, all right, I'm going to send it back and call it a day, because like I need it to be better than this. This is not quite the QC that I would appreciate, but we haven't come across any that have been really horrendous. I think the only one that we ever had dramas with was Rod Geeks before it was bought out. And there was one time from them, because we used their blanks for years. But one particular orange one was coming in, and it was like making a left turn going right and then going straight. And we were like, this is not okay. We sent it back. It came back into us.
There was no straightest axis. Like, that's the
Yeah.
problem with it. Like, you could not build it and it be straight. Either it went left when you put it right, or went
There was
right
no
when you put it
straight. Yeah.
left, and it just was not.
It looked like a witch's broom. And then we sent it back. They sent it to us. It came and broke the second
I think
time. And we were like,
I think somebody
and they finally sent us a straight one.
said, I think that we're talking about where the composite blanks with their fiberglass in the top third or so of the blank and then carbon down below. Those seem to sometimes be more prone to have a little bit of a kick. I think just maybe because of the different materials and how they cure or something. I've seen some that can be a lot worse than others, but but generally they oftentimes aren't that, you know, from a good quality builder as a general rule, they're pretty good shape. So.
Well, and blank materials have come a long way since, Dale Clemens was, saying we have to build on the spine. So things have changed just slightly, but I still, to this day, will spine it and, adjust from there for whatever needs to be. But along with your epoxy stuff, like between Wes and I, like Wes trained me, right? I don't mix my epoxy the same way Wes mixes his. He's very meticulous. He
I
doesn't want
cannot
bubbles.
stand the way she mixes epoxy. It drives me up a wall.
He is very meticulous about it. Like, he takes his times. He doesn't want to introduce any bubbles. And I'm over here just like, mix, like, yeah, because if you put it on thin and you put it on speed for me and you do a real thin coat, epoxy is very forgiving of the bubbles that you introduce it to. Now, if you're dumping a bunch of micro bubbles into it and you're putting a very big thick coat on there, then yeah, you're going to have bubbles popping into it. And it's going to be like that fish from Nemo that's like bubbles, But if you're doing very, very thin coats and you're adding just a tiny bit of heat to pop said bubbles, or you're using the straw method to pop them, or
Right.
whatever else you're doing, they're gonna go away. What? Why are you giggling?
Because there has been
Yeah,
times,
and
even the
I
way
think
that
some of the
I apply
epoxies of
epoxy in a thin manner, and you've mixed it, I can't get the bubbles out.
But I can, because I know how to work with the epoxy I've mixed. It's just one of those, like, you got to get used to a certain thing that works for you, but don't go crazy. I don't ever froth mine. Mine never looks frothy. It never looks like coffee. I just mix it because I get impatient. But you'll put yours in. Quit looking like that. You're lying. I don't froth it. Mine doesn't look like it's got white caps or coffee top to it. But generally speaking, a good quality epoxy. I mean, we use Procoat, we've used Gen 4, we've used the next level, and a bunch of other different ones. Whatever one works for you and gives you the results you want, that's the one that you definitely should be sticking to. And don't, like you said, overthink it, because we shouldn't complicate something that's as easy as putting part one, part two, mix, apply. There are a lot more things that we have to overthink when it comes to rod building instead of applying epoxy. So, I mean, you kind of answered this earlier, but I kind of missed it. Like, when did you start building? Were you saying only 5 years ago is when you really started getting into rod building?
so the time is kind of blurred, but I'm pretty sure it was the 2020 ICRB was that first one. I wasn't building at that point. I just kind of went to learn, and I think it was September of that year when I got around to wrapping the first guide. Actually, my first guide on a rod. So, and doing some wraps and things like that. After it kind of had all my ducks in a row with the workshop side. So yeah. So it's been right about 5 years, I guess, at this point. Kind of wrapping. So.
Dang, you've been doing some crazy builds then since 5 years. Like, I didn't realize it'd only been 5 years that you've been building. That's awesome.
Certainly been benefited from all the knowledge, a lot of the knowledge shared by a lot in the community, and the resources that are out there and available to kind of help give that kickstart. But that said, you can watch as many videos and read as many forum posts and Facebook posts as, but it ultimately does come down to you have to spend the time at the bench, right? And you got to put be willing to put the thread to the rod and give something a try, and not be willing or not be afraid to cut it off if it comes out like comes out not looking like you want it to, and give it another go. And that's ultimately how you learn is by doing these things, and not being afraid of it. So I think that's really been a lot of it, is just jumping into it and go whole hog, and learn where you go, and make the next. I'm always trying to make the next rod better than the last.
That's all any of us could ever ask for, honestly, is just get in, try to do it, and just be better than the last rod that you put out. And that's pretty much what we have always tried to do, and what I've personally tried to do. Each grip, each rod, each wrap, everything, just try to make it better or cleaner, or pick something to fix, and then fix it from there, and then keep continuing to improve. All right, so let's talk about these amazing guides we've been staring at for a little while. This particular set, this is your anodized colors that you have available, right?
That's correct. Yeah. So those are all titanium anodized, and that's pretty much the range of color that we can get. Not It's not in the voltage order. It's just sort of what looked good rainbow wise, I guess. But we get a number of good blues, some kind of a blue green, a yellow green, several golds, sort of from what I call pale gold to a old, almost a pen old gold kind of color, and then a couple of purples, and shades of purple. And the nice thing, and we'll talk about this too, but there's a number of these shades that match up very well with some of the other components that are available for rod building in terms of anodized reel seats and things of that nature. So it's one way we can really tie a build together, is picking the right colors there, and we'll look at some of those examples here in a few. But so here we go. Here's a good example of matching colors to the components. This set is actually a powder coated set, matching up to the limited edition Alps pink reel seats. But the I can get a pink out of the titanium anodization as well. That's very, very close to this as well. It's not quite as vibrant as the real seat, but it's very close to what the color of the guide. So I think this is one good way. I think probably some other examples as we go through these pictures, but just the ability to connect the real seat and or some of the other trim components to the guides, and you have that color from the hardware consistent as you go up throughout the whole rod, and then do other things to sort of um, to contrast or complement elsewhere. So here's an example of a this is the teal powder coat that I have, and this is a another limited edition Alps aluminum reel seat that's just about to hit the market. I'm waiting for some to come in the next few weeks. So really been I was really excited to
Where's
see that
that?
color because the teal looks really nice on a lot around.
That is like one of my favorite colors right there. So I'm kind of jealous. I need it.
Yeah,
But
there's an orange. These are all anodized parts. And this obviously this is Fuji titanium parts there, and then the new Fuji reel seats, the carbon reel seats that have the titanium hoods. So it was actually able to basically pull those hoods and anodize the hood, and then again just connecting that color scheme all the way up the rod from the reel seat hardware on into the guides themselves. So, just a way to do something unique and interesting there.
that's really cool. You could get the hoods off to do that.
Takes a little work, but yeah, it's thankfully Bill and Aaron are now stocking just the hoods itself. So if I have one that doesn't cooperate and goes bad, at least I don't have to replace the whole seat. I can just get the hood on it. This is a titanium set, and I think some of the interesting things that can do it if you're not one that wants to get involved in doing complex guide wraps, or complex cross wrap or fancy grip or something. There's still ways to bring some kind of individual personality into and themes into your rod. This is a mahi mahi color theme set in titanium, and kind of from the gold, yellow golds up to the blue as you go through. And one of my kind of first customers for the titanium guys out of California said, "Can you do a mahi set for me?" I said, well, "Sure." Well, I was looking at the colors and like, "Yep, those all are in the realm of colors we can get with titanium, so let's do that." And then here's sort of another theme set with autism awareness type color scheme, and with green, red, blue, and yellow. So again, another way to sort of bring a theme concept into the guides to tie that into the rods.
Or you even did the hook keeper on that one.
Yep, yep, yep. And I can do on the powder coat. I can do hook keepers as well as winding checks. So see, that if you want to bring that color, all the way through those portions. And then typically we think about one color. Unless we're doing a theme, it's like let's just do one color. But mixing them up and alternating the colors, between two complementary colors, oftentimes looks really nice. This teal and orange. I'm not sure if that they were going for a Miami Dolphins kind of theme here or what, but it's a good color combo. And then I think we maybe have later a teal and bronze color that looks really sharp too. Yep, there it is. That bronze color is probably my second. Well, red, teal, and then bronze are probably my top three favorite colors personally. I think that bronze is really sharp, and it can tie into, let's say, someone doing a fly rod. It's still sort of traditional enough, if you will, for a fly rod to use as the stripper on a fly rod, perhaps. And I can do powder coat the snake guides or the single foot wire guides for fly rods. Um, and but it also just, I don't know, it's kind of an elegant color, I think, as well. And if you're looking for sort of a really classy look into a rod, and you don't want to go silver or black, it really comes out well.
Yeah, I think it looks really good. Like bronze is a good neutral, but really kind of steps it up a little bit. One pink.
And just another example of kind of a two color. This purple and a hot pink. Uh, one thing maybe a good place to talk about is a lot of times people will say, "Can you match this color?" Whether maybe it's the color of their blank. Maybe they had Don Shafar paint the blank, some cool color. And Don and I talk a lot about, and sometimes we'll collaborate when someone, a joint customer is looking to match something up. And I think the thing we both sort of agree on is trying to match colors can be a very challenging thing. I mean, just look at the number of reds. I mean, there's red and 15,000 different reds, all these different shades. And so a lot of times I'll advise builders is think about a contrasting or complementing color than trying to just do, match a guide to a thread color or a blank. Because if they're not quite right, they just look wrong. So I think
Yeah.
sometimes you're better off intentionally going the other side of the color wheel, or a third off to a complementary color, and finding something that goes that way, and also it creates a more interesting rod as well. I think than trying to worry about matching something perfectly and exactly, because it's going to be very challenging to do so just because of all the variations in color and process. So,
Well, and even if you match it the same exact color per thread, and like you get it to like EVA and all, guide wraps or guides themselves or painted blanks, like all the different texture differences creates a look that they aren't the same color
right,
too. So I think that's pretty. That should be,
right,
your teal that might be the same color code as the blank that's been painted teal is not going to be looking exactly alike.
right.
That's a cool color combo.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, that bronze works really well with so many different colors. What I find it fun is when I'm running running these parts, and putting them into the oven. A lot of times I try to do multiple guide sets or multiple sets at a time. Just to make it more efficient. And so it's always interesting the multiple colors that go in the oven at the same time on the powder coat. And like more often than not, I'm like those two colors are really cool together, and you wouldn't have necessarily thought about it until you see them, hanging in the oven, baking, and see what color, see the color after they come out nice and glossy like that. But so yeah, it's just, but that bronze becomes a kind of really very good universal color, I think, to work with a lot of different things. And then this is sort of the, I guess, the complementary option to the first one we looked at. This isn't all the colors that I offer for powder coat. I've expanded that list a fair bit at this time. I actually don't have the hot pink or that sea foam, I guess. I don't have those on the website. The rest of these colors on here are using candy clear powder coats. And what that means is that they're translucent. So the underlying finish of the guide reflects through the powder coat itself. So as a general rule, I powder coat on top of the polished stainless or the silver guides. I can also do it on the Fuji corrosion control silver because of that color is texture of this corrosion control silver finish. They come out with a little bit of a frosted kind of look, but it's still a nice sharp look as well. I did earlier this year introduce a kind of a new line of the color or the powder coated guides called the Color Tough series. And what I'm doing on those, and I don't have these on the website yet. I need to find that time. But what I do with those is I actually media blast the parts, and I do that to just to give an extra bite for the powder coat to effectively mechanically adhere to. And this is for mainly for customers that might be really rough on their gear or do a lot of say pier fishing or something where they're going to be prone to really banging those guides up against a railing and things of that nature. While the powder coat is quite resilient as we've talked about, and out of the hundreds of sets probably over the last 3 or 4 years that I've shipped to customers, I've had a couple where there's been a couple issues, and I did have a little period of time where my oven wasn't getting to the temperature that I thought it was, and so the parts weren't getting cured, and some of those were failing before they even got to the customer. But so take that out of it, and we've solved that. I've had one or two cases where things where they've had some issues, and how much of that was a failure of the part versus abuse by the user, unclear. But that's why I wanted to offer the Color Tough version, just to give that extra level of protection and insurance. And on the Color Tough side, I'm going to offer a basically a lifetime warranty on those parts. If they do ever chip or peel, I'll replace the I'll provide a new coated version. Can't rewrap the guide for them, of course, but I could replace the part for them if that came to it. So, but like I said, it's not the only downside to the Color Tough I see is since I since I am using these candy clears and I media blast the finish, that shininess is gone off the part, so you get a little bit of a more matte look to the part and a little darker color, which is just a different look at the end of really. And for some, I've noticed there's a trend on some of the manufacturers to provide sort of these matte color blanks. I'm seeing sort of these almost army green and tans, and I know Rod Forge had several that were like that at some of the shows recently, and that's sort of seems to be a bit of a trend. That that color tough version kind of almost maybe ties into that sort of blank style a little bit closer. So.
Yeah, it's definitely trending towards matte colored things here lately, matte finish blanks, and I like the shiny personally.
So I have a question, Mike. How much time and
Yep.
R&D did it take to not get anything on the guides?
On the actual rings.
Yeah, on the actual rings.
I've developed a process, kind of a fixture, I guess you could say, or a process to basically mask off those rings. I start off doing high temperature tape, that kind of gold colored tape that you see, sometimes used in t-shirt application processes or other things, and it works, but it's not very pliable. And when you look at a ring, how the rings kind of have a curvature to them, that tape doesn't form to that overly well. So yeah, I went through a number of processes and kind of finally kind of came up on a process and a fixture to help basically allow me to mask. And I had to have it for each of the different size guides, of course. Still something I'm ongoing, kind of constantly looking at new and more innovative ways to do that to make it more efficient for me on the production side of it as well. But yeah, that was probably the big trick in it. Just people ask all the time, "Are you popping the rings out?" No, I don't know that you can get the ceramics out of a lot of the guides these days between the epoxy they apply to them and just the way the metal is formed. I would never want to try to get the guide out much. I know that they get pressed in, right? They get at manufacturing time, they're basically using a press to push the ring in, and it deforms the metal out just enough for that ring to pop in. But getting it out is a whole different other story, I think. So not something I would want to attempt and try to address. So yeah, they have to be basically effectively masked off to paint and handle that way. So it's been a bit of a process, just like on the titanium side. I've got a bone pile, as I said, of parts that, as I went through the learning process of how to get a good consistent color and sheen. And even then, sometimes I'll get a order of guides from the manufacturers, and I don't know if the metallurgy is slightly different from time to time, but they just act different, behave different. I know sort of how it should work. Sometimes you had to manipulate and adjust the process and do some things along the way to get the right result on the back end, even with the titanium. So.
Yeah, because that's one thing I've noticed with like your guides versus some others that we've used in prior years. Some of the other ones that we had bought before had like little etch lines around the guide rings, and you would see like where it would not be completely off of the ring, and then you would notice that would chip, and then it would chip more further down. Whereas the ones we've gotten from you, I can never find a spot where it like is touching the guide ring. So,
And I mean, I'll say it's still a very manual process, and I'm human, so I'm not gonna, I won't say there's not a part that, every once in a while a part might come out with a little issue. But as I tell folks, if there's ever a problem or you get a guide you're not happy with, reach out to me and we'll make it right. So definitely not something that's just running down a automated manufacturing line somewhere. These are more powder coated and kind of just that mixed set. Someone wanted a bubble gum. I think they were doing a bubble gum theme rod with this particular set. So those are probably actually Fuji KW that had the corrosion control silver finish. So you can't really tell in the picture here probably, but they have a little bit of a frosted kind of look to them versus that bright gloss that the polished frames come out with. It's probably a good place to talk about. You can order the guides off of my website, www.customcolorguides.com, or you can go to Back Creek Custom Rods and it'll take you there as well. On the titanium side, I have the Alps and the Fuji titaniums that you can order on the website, and then for the powder coat, I have mostly this the Alps part, pretty much the full line of Alps guides, and I do have some guide sets for Alps and Fuji. That said, if someone's wanting to use American Tackle guides, or they want to do a microwave set, or if they want to use Sea Guide or something else of that nature, I can source those, or a customer can always send me the set of guides and I'll process them and ship them back as well. So, if you have a favorite guide vendor that you like to use, it's not a problem to make that happen as well. So I just the Alps part, Alps I tend to keep inventory of on hand here, but the others had to bring in, so it might just increase the lead time. Generally, I try to get the parts from the time I get the order. I try to get them out the door within 5 days. I've been backed up a little bit since Foley when we were down at the Foley event. Well, between PCS and then more recently Foley, and then having to go out of town on business for a few days the other week, the last week before last, it's had me backed up a little bit, but just about to get the backlog cleared. So generally, it's about a 5 day turnaround to get from the order to get those out to you, out to customers. So can definitely do that, and again can do obviously tip tops, and we can do winding checks and hook keepers. I do get questions about doing reel seats from time to time, and the answer there is sort of. I can powder coat a reel seat. However, we would have to mask off the threaded portion because the powder coat just would add too much thickness for the tolerance of the nut on that. So if it was something where you could, the color scheme, you're cool with having the silver on the threaded portion and whatever color, two-tone effect, we could do that. And as in the picture here, I could do roller guides, do those quite frequently as well. Or if you wanna go, go big and go with the, say, the Winthrop titanium roller guides, we can anodize those. I've done a few of those for a customer. They came out great. So, but yeah, this particular set here, I think this is what went on the Jelly Belly rod. So those were the kind of the themes, the colors that were in the wrap, and also the colors that were in the letters Jelly Belly on the grip. So we just sort of carried that out, each of those colors out through the guides of that rod. So just a fun bright rod that we ended up with.
So, Mike, we've got a couple questions for you from some people. Justin is wanting to know if the
Okay.
guides will warp under the heat and weaken them during the baking process.
No, they don't. They're fine. The time they're in the oven's only about 10 to 15 minutes at about 400 degrees. So it's nowhere close to a point that it's going to affect the metal or change the characteristics of the metal or the ceramic for that matter. And I've not seen
And then,
any signs of the epoxy being affected or softened or more
awesome.
brittle either. So.
John is also wanting to know if you can do the folding hook keepers. Will it interfere with the folding?
I have not done a folding hook keeper. I would think it would. I think that the powder goes on literally as a powder. It's almost like flour in consistency and texture. And it goes on and basically you're passing a current through you're charging basically static electricity is causing the powder to kind of cling to the part, and then it gets baked. So when you bake it, that powder flows out. So yeah, I think it would certainly and just fuse that folding hook keeper, unless that folding hook keeper could come apart. I've never looked at one that close. I've got some, but I've never really used them personally. So I think that would probably not be an option on those. But on the rectangle or the American Tackle deluxe hook keepers and drop shot type hook keepers, all those all do great.
Do you know why they don't make titanium tip tops so that they can be anodized?
So the titanium tip tops can be anodized. It's interesting. It's something I learned. It's kind of another area. Kind of, I would always say they can't be anodized. Can't be anodized. I kind of cracked the code a little bit on how to anodize them, but the tube itself is actually stainless. The frames are titanium on the titanium ones. Why is the tube not titanium? I can only imagine it has to do with what's involved in forming the tubes and maybe the permutation number of permutations of tube sizes. I'm guessing it's more about the the metallurgy in forming those different tubes. So the tube is stainless. The frame is titanium, and then they're basically welded in some fashion together. So I can, and I can and quite regularly do anodize the tip tops. It's just the tube itself stays silver. Oftentimes, I'll recommend to customers that we powder coat the tip top if it's a color that's close enough of a match to the whatever we're anodizing. One is if there's a guide on your guide train that you're likely to break the ceramics on, and it's likely going to be your tip top in a lot of cases for reeling up a swivel or a weight or something like that, and and those are probably or banging it on something. So those are oftentimes the most damaged, readily damaged part. So it hurts less when you're putting a a $8 powder coated tip top replacing it than a $35 or 40 whatever $35 titanium torchite tip top. But it just sort of depends how they want to go about it on that. And then again, if it's a ring 5 tube 4 tip top, there's just not much metal there to color when you're only talking about the frame and not the tube. And I'll do it, but is it worth it? In the scheme of things, is it worth it or
Yeah.
not? Because there's just not much there to see. So that's it. Now, if we're talking about a ring 8 or 10 and tube 8 or something, they look great. They come out looking really nice. But that's just something to consider as well. I mean, I'm not certainly not gonna want to turn away business on it, but sometimes people want me to anodize Fuji 4.5s or something, and it's like we can do it. Is there enough there for you to see? Is it worth it? It's sort of what it boils down to.
These are like Hulkbuster guides.
Yeah, I get a lot of questions as well about can I color the rings? And the answer there is no. So these were, I think they're forecast guides. I can't remember now, but they had the ring itself. It's from the factory, and it's a PVD coating that those golds and holographic colors and the blue. Sometimes you see those are a PVD a vapor deposited process that gives them that coating on top of the probably zirconium ring in that case. So but we've done some interesting things like this set where we color them red. So like you say, sort of that Hulk Buster look, and I've got some of the ones that have the chameleon or holographic rings. We've colored those in different colors, and they've come out really really interesting as well. Here's a good example of the tip tops, right? Where the tube itself there is stainless. So, and you can even see there are a couple, some places like on that blue one, there's a little dot there that didn't color, and that is probably epoxy in that based on that location. I would say that's probably some epoxy, but the rest of it, you can see the weld spots where the titanium gets, however they do it, laser weld or however it happens to the tube itself. And sometimes where the titanium to the steel get welded, that little regional area right there will not color, particularly in the high voltage colors like green. It will not color as well because those metals have kind of mixed, and it just won't take on the color either as vibrantly or just all the way to the color you're trying to get at times as well. So it's one reason I like to offer the Fuji MN version of the tip top. It's the one that has the tang that comes off, and actually wrap the tang on the blank as well. And partly because there's one less weld in those scenarios that the lower end of the guide is not welded to the tube, so it just allowed that those tend to color nicer as also. So just some little quirks of the titanium anodized. And here's kind of another theme. It's red, and that's actually just a stock silver, but a red, white, and blue patriotic kind of effect. I don't know that I've got a example of it in the pictures I sent you, but one thing I've started offering as well this year is a kind of an optional upgrade to the color to add a holographic flake. One of the more popular colors I've had is something called dark side, and it's sort of a dark gray, almost black color with this holographic flake in it. And when you get it out in the sunlight, it just lights up.
I saw
Just
that. You brought
real
that
cool looking.
last
Well,
year.
it was right, yeah, yeah, had it, and but I was able to source a clear coat that has that holographic flake in it. So for small additional upcharge to the base cost, I'll powder coat them, say red, and then apply the holographic clear on top, so you can get that holographic flake on any of the available colors, as well as if someone wanted that. And I've had a couple customers here recently do that, and those come out really pretty cool. So, particularly for the bass guys with their glitter boats and they can have their rods, the guides and their rods now match their boat, right? So
The glitter
figure
boats.
to
That's what a
sell
new
them
name.
that way.
Sparkle. So Duncan was asking, have you tried to powder coat the guides twice, white under the candy color like they do in the automotive painting industry?
Um, yes and no. I do in very limited quantities. I'll do some white and some opaque colors. The opaques bring some challenges to the processing of it, and basically I have to run them. It's almost like doing two guides to do some of the opaque colors the way they have to be processed. I haven't done a candy clear on top of the white, but I did do some like on some I was doing some of the wire guides for some ice rod sets, and I coated those white and then put a neon on top of that, just so that you had that neon, even though it's on the silver, that having it on that white just really gives it even more pop. So yeah, so some of those are options. It's just it kind of comes down to the economics of doing some of those colors twice. They become a lot more labor intensive. So
That set makes me think of Santa Claus.
Why Santa?
I don't know. It just makes me think of Santa Claus.
red and silver, silver bells. Yeah, it's
I guess.
with these. I've had with the roller guides. I've had people. In some cases, people want to have the washer colored, and that can be done. I don't like the color of the screws because again, the powder coat will just build up into the thread, or not the thread, but the slot, and may inhibit being able to actually secure it back properly. So and like the tip top here, this is a swivel tip top. So kind of going back to the conversation about the folding hook keepers, I didn't want the powder coat to get into the swivel mechanism and bind it up basically. So that one, in that case, what we decided to do, particularly since we were going to have the silver elsewhere, was just to mask off the where the pivot points were on that, and go with it that way. So you kind of, you do what you have to do on some of these to make sure it, like anything with custom rod building, it has to function first, right? That's the first order of priority, is it has to function, and then we do all the cool other stuff beyond that. So this is an example of a Winthrop titanium tip top. So that's actually an anodized tip top. Came out really nice. And then the guides are, I don't recall if those are powder coated or anodized. I'm guessing they were anodized. I'm guessing those are titanium, giving it a Winthrop top, but I honestly can't remember. I'm pretty sure those are anodized guides as well. And another example,
That,
just sort of the color matching to the other rod parts. That's what I call
so if
violet.
somebody comes to you and wants you to do a real seat, what kind of real seat are you going to need even for anodization? Like what
Well,
can you do, what can't you do?
so on real seats, so most of the real seats we deal with that are metal are aluminum, and there is such a thing as aluminum anodization. That's, in fact, that's all those real seats we've seen are anodized aluminum, but it's a very different process than what we do for anodizing titanium. It actually involves dyes and battery acid and hot temperatures, and it's a very, very, very different process. Something I haven't ventured into or decided to tackle yet. So, and there's enough color options of anodized real seats that are out there that there's probably not as much of a need there. If someone wants to powder coat a real seat, then what we'll typically do is do it on a silver aluminum reel seat. We'd have to mask off the threaded area and go from there. There are were. I'm not sure if they're even available in the market at this point, but Struble made a titanium fly rod seat. I don't, not sure if it's a- available anymore, but I did have customers send one to me, and we titanium anodized that seat. We did gold or did it in gold or something. Came out really nice, but I'm not sure those are generally available in the market. I went trying to source one to have a sample, and I couldn't find anyone that had them in stock anymore. So
What about the
they
Limkey real
they
seats?
were
Those
they're
are out
not.
of
I want to say
titanium,
they're.
aren't they?
I want to say they were. Which one? Sorry.
The Limkey real seats. They're fly real seats.
It was Lemke, not Struble. Sorry. It was,
Okay.
but
Yeah,
yeah, I
Ron
don't think
Weber
that
has
at least
those.
last time I looked about a year ago. Yeah, about a year ago when I looked, they didn't. No one had any of those available in stock. So I don't know if he's not making them in titanium anymore. They're they're pricey because he's literally taking a chunk of titanium and milling it down. I want to say they were $100+ or something like
Yeah.
that, just for that real seat. So that may be why
Yeah.
they're not
As
very
far as I know,
available.
he's making them to order. He
But yeah,
doesn't
but
keep
no, if there
them
are, if
just
they can be, so okay, that may
okay.
be. But no, it's yeah, that's definitely doable on the titanium side, and then again on the powder coat side. The other option I haven't really explored yet, and it's on my list for one day, is Cerakoting, and because that can apply a lot thinner than a powder coat, and that may be a good option on a real seat, um, assuming you can get the same color gloss factor. A lot of times Cerakote, a lot of folks that are in the gun world will know Cerakote for coloring gun parts, and but typically the colors you see there are flat earth and muted or flat colors. I believe you can Cerakote in a gloss with the right kind of combination material. So it's something I want to maybe look into one time sometime. But when I've looked into it before, it just looked like it was to do one offs, like one real seat. It looked kind of cost prohibitive because of the amount of material that you would have to mix, and then the cleanup time and all that afterwards. It didn't seem very efficient for one offs versus if you're doing a big batch of something at one time. Greg, I see your question about how does the candy clear go on over the black. It doesn't. I mean, I guess I could. You can, but it would come out just super dark and muted. You wouldn't really see the color in really any case. Like we had one customer who was trying to do he wanted to do a marine set, and he had some guides, or we sourced some. I guess I sourced some guides for him with had the gold rings, but the only thing we could get them in was the one of those sort of smoked titanium finishes on the guide itself. So it wasn't the bright silver; it was like a you know almost a gray, and when they powder coated red, it came out like a super dark maroon. So it just again because that candy clear just is transparent to the base color. So the only thing I'll do over a black is if someone perhaps wants to do the holographic clear. I could do that over the black, of course. So,
Awesome. So, just to first off, thank you for taking the time out tonight to hang out with us and chat about all these amazing guides that you can do and the ways that you can, they can take these guides and customize their rods and stuff. To remind everybody exactly where they can find you on social media so that if they have questions about anything or they want to order from you or they want to see some of the products you've already done other than just the few photos that you've shared tonight, because you've got some amazing photos on your website, let everybody know where to locate you.
you can go to from my website. You can go to www.customcoloredguides.com, and that's where you can see some pictures and you can order there on the website. You can also find it Facebook at Custom Color Guides, or Back Creek Custom Guides is sort of the rod page on that side. But all the guides are on the Custom Color Guides Facebook page. So go like and follow and share or whatever over there as well. And one thing I did want to offer up is for folks listening to the podcast here tonight. I'm going to offer a 10% discount code for any of the guides, winding checks, or hook keepers. You can use the discount code Decorative Studio at checkout to get that 10% on any of those guides that you can order off the site there. So it's sort of a thank you to Wes and Mary and to the community here for having us on. So.
Oh, that's awesome, guys. Look at y'all getting 10% off. I never got 10% off. I'm just kidding. But no, we appreciate you taking the time out tonight to hang out with us and chat and educate us. Like, this has been a very educational and also interesting discussion tonight because, like the whole titanium tubes on the tip tops. I never understood why we couldn't get them anodized because they said they were titanium. So why weren't they coming out anodized? And just your little and just informative, and we really really appreciate you taking the time out tonight to share your work and also just have a discussion with us and let people know that there's more than just making grips and decorative wraps and painting blanks, that now you can also get colored guides, obviously with some restrictions, but this is just another way to jazz up your builds. Like you said earlier, if you don't want to do intricate guide wraps, let the guides themselves speak for the build. And I would even go as far to say, somebody else in the comments actually mentioned it earlier, just wrap the guides in silk so that the guide is there with all the color. And I'm pretty sure you've done that on a few of your builds, haven't you?
Yeah, I did that on a surf rod actually with a set of teal anodized guides and silk wrapped it, and remember posting it up on one of the North Carolina surf pages, and they're like, how long are they going to hold up with that glue? And it's like, I guess they just thought they were glued on, and so it's like, no, but yeah, it the way I color them, powder coat or otherwise, I do it so that the top of the foot is colored for that reason alone, in case someone wanted to do a silk ghost wrap that they could show it off that way. So.
Leave it to them to think it's only glued on. That's like when I did Holt Luster and I did the
But
silk
yeah,
and I put the
appreciate
little
you
tops
having
of the screws on it. They thought I messed up the blank because I screwed through it.
we just need to start letting people believe what they want to believe. I think so. Uh, but no, I appreciate you having me on tonight. It was fun and enjoyed talking about it. And
Yeah, it's been
let's
awesome.
happy to chat with anyone if we can help with color guide options.
Yeah, you guys give Mike a shout out, please. And we're going to go ahead and let you go. And thank you once again for being here. And we appreciate it. And make sure you guys take advantage of his offering of the getting 10% off for the color guides through the end of May. By the end of May, it ends, but you get 10% off using Decorative Studio. So thank you again, Mike. We'll chat soon. Appreciate you. And I hope you
Yeah,
have a great night.
thanks.
Wait, you got to say it. You said the only.
Bye.
There you go. So thank you, Mike, for being on tonight. We really, really, really appreciate it. It was awesome. Customizing your rods with just getting colored guides. I think that's like really with the Phoenix build. That was one in particular where I was like, I can't just put black guides on this. Like, how boring. So I asked Mike, and Mike always gets aggravated with me. I know he does because I always ask for I was one of the ones. I was like, "Can you get red?" Wes had asked him before when we were doing Holt Busters
I need
guides.
red.
I need red guides, and he's like, I can get close to it, but it's not red. And he's like, "No, I need red guides."
He's like,
And
I can powder coat them. Fine.
and it was like, so we got some powder coated guides from him for Holt Buster, and for the Phoenix one, he did an amazing job, and he went out of his way. He actually showcased those it was 2 years ago, I think, when I started Phoenix. He brought them to the ICRBE, and he had them in a little show box with a light, and they were my guides that were sitting there, and I was like, I want to take them, but they looked so cute sitting in that little show box because he had like the fire flames on the back of it. Like him and his wife Carrie really know how to like do a display, like legit know how to do a display. They had the lights behind them, had the flames for the background. The guides are sitting there like zip tied to the board or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, those are my guides. I want to take them home. And he's like, you gotta wait till the end of the show. And I was like, "Grr." But he ombered them. So he went out of his way to do from the darkest orange that he could get to all the way up to the tip top,
Which was like almost a fire yellow.
almost like straight fire yellow. And I was like, I'm in love as soon as I saw them. So his concept of being able to, like the Mahi theme ones, which I don't think those actually made it into his photos. So by all means, go check it out because he's got some really cool colors. Like you just barely saw a tasting.
You saw the tip of the iceberg
of what this man actually has done, and think outside the box with these because it's kind of cool because maybe you don't want to get into grips. Maybe you don't want to make, you get Don Schaefer to paint a Blake for you. Get some basic colored EVA grips or whatever from Mudhole, and then go buy some or get some guides and have Mike color them, and bam, you got a cool looking build. And you didn't have to do a whole lot of work because you made everybody else do it for you.
So, Fat Cat, he can do neons on powder coating side of things. Mm-hmm. The neons you can't get in anodized, but he can powder coat neons. And by all means, any color you're looking for, just send him a message, and he'll get back to you and let you know, yes, this is what it'll do. This is what it would look like. This is it if I've done it before.
And the great thing about Mike is he's very straightforward. He'll be 100% honest with you. He's not going to sugarcoat it. If he can't do it, he can't do it. And he's going to let you know A, B, C, and D as the why he can't do it.
Yeah.
He's not going to be just like, nah, I just don't feel like it. He's legit. Which I didn't realize that he did a 5-day turnaround. That's insane.
Yeah, he tries to get them out as quick as possible.
Man don't sleep, apparently. But anyways, we want to take a minute, and we want to thank our sponsors real quick. Foundation Outdoor Group, Mudhole, one and the same. We appreciate them and we thank them. And another thing about tonight with Mike doing the guides, as he said, he can source the guides. So if you've got the any of the microwaves or the Tyforge guides, any of the titanium sets that they have available, if you want them anodized, and some of them, obviously, any of the other ones that you want powder coated can be used. So it's a great place to get those from. We appreciate Mudhole for supporting us and allowing us to do these awesome giveaways and also to talk about a whole bunch of different topics as well, as long as traveling. And also on that note, we really, really are big into workshops and classes and things that they have. And the reason why we're so into this is because if you think about the holidays that are coming up, what holidays are coming up, Wes?
Mama's Day and Memorial Day and Father's Day.
And what would be a great way to bond with your mom or your dad, or to send your mom and dad together on a date to learn how to do something they love?
To put them through the frustration of building your first rod together and bonding over that frustration, and then being able to fish to get the frustration out.
And then the mom out fishing the husband every time.
It's usually how that shit works.
It is usually how it goes down. Rod building classes is actually a great gift for anybody that is interested in learning how to do custom fishing rods, or like it's a thing about it is, if you and your dad are really into fishing, what's a cool way to step into rod building? Go take a class. You can just take the class and you get a rod that comes with it. You'll come home with it. They're literally send these rods home with you, and a lot of supplies can be sent home at the same time. And then you can go take that rod fishing. And you may never, he or she, mom or dad, may never ever want to build another rod again, right? But it's a cool experience for you to take them to go do that. So it may be something that a son and a mom, or a daughter and a mom, or husband and wife, maybe you want to go build 2 rods. Maybe she gets her rod first, and then the husband's like, I want to go get one too. So they go take another class, and now he's got his rod, but now they've got 4, So you should definitely check out the rod classes. What are they laughing at?
Couple it with marriage
counseling, especially over the epoxy mixing, right? Because apparently look at that face. He's got some dramas with my epoxy. My epoxy, when I do it on my wraps,
works for you.
Always looks good. Now, I won't say about the guides, because I make you do the guides.
Who do you tell to do epoxy?
On the guides.
For, like, everything from the first coat on.
Guides.
After the first coat, let me put that one. Second coat on, who do you tell to do it?
Guides is you. All day long. I will ask you to do the guides because you can get them done in like 2 or 3 coats, as it takes me 5, 6, 7 times to get them done because I'm doing it so thin that I'm scared I'm going to get bubbles. I can do it on wraps. I can do it on the marbling. I got no dramas with these long straight sections. I got no dramas with the trims. I got no dramas with that, but it's the feet on the guides that I get really scared about it getting up on the frame, and I get freaked out about.
Let it go.
Everybody laughing. Everybody's laughing about the marriage counseling. All right, so we have had an amazing show, a lot of information, a lot of knowledge. Do you guys have any questions? Because it's Q&A
Comments,
time.
concerns.
Overlays? You mean like me putting up graphics on the screen so there's a whole bunch of overlays and you can just watch videos of me doing stuff? Don't do that. It'll feed into the mic. I'm just kidding. What about overlays? Like how to do it? Like actual how to do the overlays, or like pros and cons, or like just a general discussion about them? Because we all know how I feel about Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice was a very awesome overlay. That grip set turned out so good. So cool.
Whoever ordered Beetlejuice, you're lucky. You're lucky. Because she underpriced you.
I did. I underpriced
mistake,
myself.
but
But that was my fault that I
The next
underpriced
person that
myself.
orders something like that, go get it.
Did what all said about the decals. Thank you. All as was worked better than before, but not perfect. Stepping stone in the right direction. So that's great. That's all we can ask for. You'll eventually.
No, we can ask for it not to fuck up.
Right. Well, that's true. You could ask for it just to go like it's supposed to, but you know, at least it's improving. So hopefully, the next couple
Saw your
that you
shirt
try.
recently. Demonstration. Short. Oh,
I saw your short recently demonstration.
thanks, Carlos.
Oh, a demo. You want a demo? We can talk about it. I'd have to be one that's already glued together. Like,
Yeah, we're not doing a live for waiting on glue to dry.
no, because we'll be talking about some random stuff at that point. Because we'll be like, we've got to fill 20 minutes a time, and we'd have to crank the heat up to the because we keep it at like 68, 70 when we're in here.
If
which
you
he's-
can't tell by my
he's
cold
shivering
chills.
tonight. But if we have it at like 72, because all the lights that are on us, we get too hot. So we have to cool it down. And in that process, with it being cooler, just like with epoxy, the contact cement takes longer to dry. And because right over here is where I usually glue up stuff on my glue up table, the air is blowing right across it. So if we wouldn't crank the heat up, and Wes would be like, because he'd be hot and cranky. And I probably would not be in a good mood either.
All facts.
We would be very aggravated. But no, well, I'll see. We'll see how it goes. Duncan West, epoxy. How is the best way to get a smooth finish?
Speed kills. I'm sorry. Speed is actually the only way.
Applying on speed has made a massive difference.
Speed and
Thin.
thin coats. Unless you're in a hurry, and then there's a couple secrets to that.
But
It's apply it very thick and spread it this way, not this way.
But they
But
need
that's
to.
more of a demonstration to show you than
Well, guess what? One of our episodes is going to be about you applying epoxy, sir.
you take it, you put it in a blender.
We just talked about how meticulous you are about mixing epoxy. Don't lie to them. But they need to master how to put it on accurately at a thin coat on speed before
Yes.
you start teaching them the
Yes.
shortcuts, because then you know how to manipulate it.
It's so like when I first started doing speed and thin coats, it would take 6 to 8 coats to get it where I wanted it. And then I got comfortable enough doing it that way to start making it thicker, putting it on with speed.
I wore my Southern and Rod Builders hoodie the other day. I love it. It fits perfectly. I love mine too. I got to order more. Which, if you guys don't realize, the Southern shirts have gone to print on demand. The decorativestudio.com, that website has the Southern sweatshirts, the same sweatshirts that we were getting that were super comfy, and the same soft style t-shirts that we were getting on that site. And you can
Along
order
with other designs.
other t-shirts, other aprons that
There's an apron that says, I swear it's just epoxy.
Greg ordered one of those. But they're print on demand, so that I don't have to wait for a batch order. And then because we send it to somebody local, it takes her 3 or 4 weeks,
Or longer sometimes.
depending on how backed up she is. And it's actually a little bit cheaper getting it on demand than it is coming through the other place. And so if you want more Southern t-shirts or Southern sweatshirts, I know we're kind of getting out sweatshirt season, but I tend to wear them at nighttime because I just like to be cold and warm at the same time.
Apparently I should have gone and put one on.
Well, you've got on shorts, so you are cold. But you can go to the website and get that anytime you want to. What?
Last comment.
Use the cappuccino frother. For real, get the little blender that was an immersion blender and go. And yeah,
Don't
you'd
do
have
that.
cappuccino in a heartbeat. I don't believe in frothing it, but I do believe in mixing it. All right, guys, let's wrap it up. So, big thanks to Mike for coming and hanging out with us tonight and talking about his custom color guides. Do check him out. By all means, go check out the stuff that he does. His rod building business, which also ties into the custom color guides, is Back Creek Custom Rods. And his guides are on custom colored guides. Pretty simple to remember. Both have business pages on Facebook. They both are active in the community and other Facebook groups and stuff on his personal information as well. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns about it, Mike is very easy to talk to. He's going to be very honest with you. He's going to tell you what he can and what he can't do, and he's going to give you a plethora of things to choose from. And we really do appreciate him coming on and chatting with us, educating us, because I didn't know all the ins and outs of this stuff. Like I said, could never figure out why the tips were never getting anodized when they said they were titanium. We'll come to find out the tubes are stainless. Didn't know that. And pointing out where, the fusion, between the stainless to the titanium, like there's going to be some dramas, and it is what it is, and just being like, this is your best bet to powder coat it instead of doing this, because this process is a little bit cheaper than that process, and $8 versus $35. I got a giggle out of that one. I was like, yeah, that the tips are really honestly the first one to get beat up. They really are. Those ceramics are going to crack. When you get excited while you're fishing, sometimes you bring that swivel up in there, or that weight knocks on it, or whatever the case may be. And usually the tip's the first one to suffer. So $35 for a two-tone tip versus $8 for a solid color.
No, you got that backwards.
Oh, I'm sorry. It was backwards.
$8
for a two-tone kit, or $35 for a solid. Yeah. There's a big difference between the two. So, and yes, that's right, John. Mike's wife does custom hats. She's got her own company. It's Red Wolf Custom Lasers. Wes and I have a bunch of hats from her. Actually, the newest one that I added to my collection from her says "I'm the problem," because as you heard it earlier in the episode, I was the reason why Mike decided to put jelly beans in his rod, because I said, hey, why not put jelly beans in it? That'd be cool. And implanted that little bug to make him go figure it out. And I just own it. I'm the problem. I'm the one that's going to give you the most complicated thing to figure out, but most people go and figure it out, and they love the fact that they did. So I'm the problem. Hi. Anyways, use the discount code for the guides for Mike
until the end of May.
And what's the discount code?
Decorative Studio.
So Decorative Studio, not the Decorative Studio, but Decorative Studio.
Decorative Studio.
And get 10% off until the end of May. So this is a great time to kind of get into that and getting some color guides at a little bit cheaper rate. And appreciate Mike for doing that, because that was really cool. And like I told him earlier, I want 1% of kickback. Just kidding. Anyways.
So buy a bunch.
Yeah, right. Buy a whole lot so I can pay for the bills. Anyways, y'all have a great night. Thanks for hanging out with us, and we appreciate it. And we'll talk later. Bye.